Brothers and sisters, from wherever you're watching us from, Shalom. I hope you've been well. I hope God has been gracious to you. I hope you are doing good and great things from wherever you're watching us from. Welcome to this new episode. And today we are looking at chapter 30 of this beautiful book of Genesis. Last time we were able actually to look at chapter 29, whereby we were looking at Jacob arriving at Haran and him getting married to these two beautiful daughters who were given to him by his uncle. And we saw him even God blessing him with the first 4 children. That was Reuben, who was the firstborn, Simeon, the secondborn, Levi, the thirdborn, and Judah, the fourthborn. And if you notice, actually, all these children are named, and their mother actually says something about them. For example, for Reuben, he said, "It is because the Lord has seen my mystery, so surely my husband will love me." For Simeon, he said, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." For Levi, he said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." And to Judah, actually, the fourthborn, he says, "This time I will praise the Lord." He chooses to praise the Lord, so he named him Judah. Now, today we look at chapter 30, and the Bible records, when Rachel saw she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children, I'll die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children?" Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her, so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her." So she gave him the servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me and has listened to my plea and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won." She named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then he said, "What good fortune." She named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "How happy I am! The women will call me happy." So she named him Asher. Verse 14 records, during wheat harvests, Reuben went out into the field and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrake." But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrake too?" "Very well," Rachel said. "He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrake." So when Jacob came in from the field that evening, Leah went out to meet him. "You must sleep with me," she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrake." So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a 5th son. Leah said, "God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband." So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son, and Leah said, God has presented me with precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor, because I have borne him 6 sons. And he named him Zebulun. Verse 21 records, sometime later she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. And God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave her a son. And he said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add to me another son. Verse 25 records, after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away so that I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you. I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, name your wages and I will pay them. Jacob said to him, you know how I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you whenever you have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? What shall I give you? He asked. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied. But if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending my flock and watching over them. Let me go through all your flock today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wage, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored will be considered stolen. Verse 34 records, agreed, Laban said, let it be as you have said. That same day he removed all the male goats that were speckled or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that he had white on them, and all the darkened colors lambs, and he blessed them in care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between him and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from polar and almond and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood in the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flock when they come to drink. When the flocks were in the heat and came to drink, they mated in front of branches, and they bore young that was sprinkled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flesh of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the speckled and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flock for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger female were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so that they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not blessed them there. So the weak animals went to Laban and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and female and male servants and the camels and donkeys. Brethren, this is a very beautiful scripture that shows us actually how the children of Jacob came to be. And of course, the Bible begins by recording how Rachel was jealous of the sister and he decided to give a servant to his husband. It actually says, "Give me children or I will die." And Jacob is very angry and he says, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" But anyway, he decides to give Bilhah to him. And of course, Bilhah conceives two children. The first one is Dan and the second one is Naphtali. So this Leah saw what actually happened and he decides also, okay, mchezo ndio hii, I will also give my own servant, that is Zilpah. And actually they gave birth to also two sons, that was Gad and Asher. And of course there is a quarrel during harvest when this young man called Reuben goes and comes back with something called madrex. And when Rachel borrows from Leah, he says, "You have taken away my husband and now you want to take my son's madrex." So they ensure that, we will agree on something that we are supposed to be doing. And of course they strike a deal. And when the husband comes, he says, "Today I have bought you, actually I have hired you for my son's matrix." And of course when they do their thing, actually that night they gave birth to this young man called Issachar. And of course Leah conceived again, of course, later, and gave birth to another guy called Zebulun. And God also blessed him with a daughter called Dinah. And again, in verse 22, the Lord remembers Rachel and he blesses him with a son called Joseph. And this is what actually Leah says. He says, "God has taken away my disgrace." She named him Joseph and said, "May the Lord add to me another son." He prays actually for another son. And actually we will see this promise, of course, being fulfilled in the later chapters. Now, of course, now Jacob decides, okay, now I have increased in terms of now children and I need to go. And he talks to Laban and Laban says, "So what shall I pay you?" And actually there's something important in verse 27. The Bible records that Laban noticed that he was being blessed because he was living with this young man called Jacob, and his blessings were coming through him. And they strike a deal. He says, "I'm going to separate your sheep, actually zile za white, or those ones which do not have spots. They are ones that have spots. We'll separate them and you'll tell me which ones you're going to give me." But of course, the ones he selected, God used to bless them. And the chapter ends by saying, "In this way the man grew exceedingly prosperous and became and owned large flesh, female and male servants and camels and donkeys." And this is actually to show how God blessed this man. Now, a few insights, brothers and sisters, from the children. It's so amazing to see how God knows how to balance things. Of course, he knew this woman who has weak eyes, he will not be loved equivalently to this beautiful figured woman called Rachel. And God decided to close her womb. And of course, she looks for alternatives. And eventually, actually, she gets this. She decides actually to give to the husband these beautiful servants of theirs, that is Bilhah and Zilpah, and of course wanna add Watoi to this young man called Jacob. But eventually in verse 22 of this chapter, God remembers actually Rachel and blesses him with this son who he calls him Joseph, and he says, "May the Lord add me another son." And truly, seeing what actually God had done actually to him, it was a testimony. Actually, the Bible records that he said that God has removed my disgrace, and he blessed him actually with a son. Of course, by this time he must have had waited for so long, because I think Joseph was the second last son, or the second last born actually of these people. And of course, there were more than 10 more sons who had been born before him. And this is the time, of course, God had blessed this woman to have Joseph. Last time we talked about waiting, and I was asking you, how much would you wait? We were talking about Joseph, and I said, he was patient for 7 years to wait. He got Leah. Waited for another 7 years. He got Rachel. And look at actually the same virtual being tested around the wife. She waited, of course. The husband got other 10 children. Actually it is 11, because when you add Dinah, she's the 11th one. And then I think Joseph is the 12th one. And this is so encouraging to see this woman patiently waiting for God's promise. Of course, we don't see anywhere God promising Rachel that he will bless him with a child. But of course, with how actually she's talking here, she must have known that God will eventually, or after some time, of course, remember him and bless him with a son. And of course, Joseph comes here. This is so encouraging. May God help us to be able to wait for him. It's so interesting to see how actually Laban confesses that he noticed that God was blessing him through this young man called Jacob. And of course, from whatever they strike, of course, the side that Jacob was, God blesses him. So if he decided to choose the spotted ones, God blessed them. If Laban changed the wages to the white ones, actually God blessed him. And this is so interesting to understand that it is not about where we are, it is not about what we have, it is about us having God. It is so interesting to see how his presence actually changes literally everything. Looking at actually this situation of this young man who goes to his uncle empty-handed. And this chapter closes by saying that he was exceedingly prosperous. And of course, he had large flocks. This meant that God had intentionally blessed him. And what actually had brought this difference is the presence of God in this young man's life. And I want to challenge all of us. Some of us maybe think maybe it is a matter of the company that you need to be working for that maybe might make you be prosperous, or a matter of the people we have been talking to or we associate ourselves with. But the fact is, the only difference comes when we have God, or when you add God in the mix. And not only actually adding him, and also actually allowing him to take the first position in whatever you do. And I'm pretty sure actually if we try him in such ways, then God must bless us. And listen, brethren, brothers and sisters, some of us might not understand how much God has blessed a lot of things, or he has bestowed a lot of blessings to us. Because of late we compare the blessings or his blessings with material things, but God has bestowed a lot of things to us. And may he help us, just like this young man, to understand what actually it means to be with him in the mix. May he help us to be able to understand how he needs to wait for him patiently. And may he give us the grace to be able to stand and wait for him for all things that he has called us into. It is so interesting to understand that it is him who brings the difference. May he continue bringing the difference in your life. May he bless you. May you allow him to walk with you and may you give him the first position in whatever you do. Shalom. May God bless you and be with you. Shalom.